we are going to switch gears now a little bit to a brand new segment here on the Daily 8. It is called NB8. AJ Evans and I sit down, and we're going to be doing this all week every week throughout the NBA season, breaking down what the Pistons are up to and also really the state of the league as well. This is the first installment of NB8, so we hope that you enjoy. AJ, I am so excited to be starting a brand new sports show right here as part of the Daily 8. We are calling it NB8. It's a play on the NBA, of course. We're going to be talking all about not only the Detroit Pistons, but really the state of the league itself. And I could not have picked a better person to start this up with than you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man, for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
This is going to be fun.
Absolutely. You know, we had you on the Sports Frenzy podcast with Dean and Andy as a fill-in, and you did such a great job, and you can just tell not only are you very knowledgeable about the sports world, but you also have a lot of passion and fandom. So, again, this is the perfect spot for you. We're both really big NBA fans, and I can't wait for this season to get started, and that is actually how we want to begin. Again, we're still in the preseason of the NBA. Once the season actually gets going, you're going to be able to hear AJ and I kind of break down what the Pistons are doing, the state of the league itself, and then we also will have some fun along the way. But AJ, this first episode, we really want to kind of set the scene and set the groundwork for the upcoming season by giving our predictions for some of the biggest NBA awards this season. So we are going to be breaking down who we think is going to win the Clutch Player of the Year, the Coach of the Year, the Sixth Man of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Most Improved, Defensive Player of the Year, and of course MVP. And we want to start off with the Clutch Player of the Year. So AJ, I'm dying to see. We haven't shared who we picked for each of these awards, so I'm dying to see who you think is going to win Clutch this year.
Yeah, this might be a bit of a generic pick, but I'm going with Luka. I think Luka is going to win Clutch Player of the Year this year. I think he's going to have the ball in his hands just a lot more. I felt like he was still finding his groove in Los Angeles towards the end of last season, but he's had an excellent summer. I think this is maybe the best summer he's had of his professional career, at least NBA-wise. It seems like his body is just really in tune, and he just seems like he's in a good place, and it seems like I think he knows he wants to be in LA, and I think he knows what the future is for him, and he knows what the expectations are. So I expect him to have the ball in his hands a lot more. Right. I think he will take full command of this offense, and I think he'll have some really big games and will probably win the Lakers a handful of really big ones this year, alongside obviously his co-star LeBron James.
Yeah, right. You picked a good team there, because that was kind of what I was going through when I was looking through this. I was like, I got to find a guy who I know is going to have the ball in his hands, but is also maybe going to be on a team where the clutch factor kind of comes in. You know, the clutch factor, of course, is games decided between 5 or more points, final 2 minutes, I think, of the fourth quarter and overtime. Yeah. So again, that's a guy that is going to really be relied upon with the Lakers, of course. And that kind of leads me into my question, because you got to think about the Clutch Awards history as well. I mean, there are a lot of big-name guys that have won this. Jalen Brunson winning last year. Steph Curry's won it before. So you got to pick a guy who, of course, has a lot of name recognition, but again, kind of like what I said, is going to have the ball in those clutch moments. I'm going with my own pick. This might be a little bit biased as a Grizzlies fan, but I'm picking Ja Morant. This is a Grizzlies team that is going to be dealing with a lot of injuries, and they're really going to need a guy to really ride the ship, and that is Ja Morant. It's been Ja Morant. So I think, again, and we've seen his incredible highlights before, that team really does, once the fourth quarter hits and it's close, it's give the ball to Ja, get out of the way. So I would not be surprised if he won it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think he can't go wrong with choosing any of those like top tier Western Conference teams, because they're just going to be some nail biters. Like we've seen it over the last, I feel like, decade or so. Just teams in the Western Conference kind of just eat each other alive. So Ja's a very good pick to go with as well. Games are going to be decided on what he does at the end of games.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to Coach of the Year now. And I want to take the first crack here, AJ, because I've got a little bit of hometown favoritism in this pick. I'm going with JB Bickerstaff. You saw what he did with the Pistons last year. I only think that the Pistons are going to be rising. You look at the East right now, a lot of the top teams are dealing with injuries. Tyrese Halliburton with the Pacers, Jason Tatum with the Celtics. So this is the year for the Pistons to really, at the very least, make it to those Eastern Conference semifinals. I think JB Bickerstaff is the guy to do it, and I cannot wait to see what he's able to turn this Pistons team into in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, JB has had a case to win it in a handful of years. He's been a coach. He's just so solid. He's so good at what he does. And I expect the Pistons to take a pretty seismic leap as well. So I don't think you can go wrong with choosing him. I almost chose him myself. I couldn't decide between two guys.
Yeah.
But the first guy that came to mind was Mitch Johnson for the San Antonio Spurs.
Right.
I think the Spurs will take another leap. The Western Conference is already really competitive and crowded, but I think they will likely take a step this year, and I think a lot of wins will come with that. Last year, I think they won 34 games. This year, I expect them to hover around that 45 range. And I know that may be a lot to ask, but I think if everyone's healthy and cohesive, things could go really well down there in San Antonio. But another guy that I have on my list, and this might be my top guy, is Jamal Mosley. Obviously, the Magic went 41-41 last year.
Right.
But Paolo Banchero was hurt, Jalen Suggs was hurt, and Franz Wagner was hurt at the end of the year. So I think if all those guys are healthy, they're expecting all those guys back at the start of the year, they could win 55 games. And with that, I think he would definitely be deserving of Coach of the Year.
Yeah. I think if the Magic can get to that win total, definitely very deserving. And he's another guy, like you said, that has had his name in recent years kind of associated with this award, has at least been, kind of talked about. So this might definitely be the year. So I'm definitely not mad about that pick at all.
Yeah. I'm very optimistic about what the Magic can do.
All right, let's move on to the six-man player, or the sixth man of the year, I guess. Yeah. This is the guy that teams are going to really rely on in that second bench unit to come in and score. AJ, who do you've got as the favorite going into the season?
Man, I've got Ron Holland as my sixth man of the year.
Another Pistons pick. There we go.
Yeah, he was such a spark plug for the Pistons last season coming off the bench. And the crazy thing was, I don't even think you could tell when Ron was playing, he was just playing off of instincts, pure instincts and athleticism. But, the Pistons have a great shooting coach, and his jumper has really made some strides. I expect him to really lead that second unit this year and possibly even crack the starting lineup. But as you know, Phil, the Sixth Man of the Year award, a lot of it is based on health and how the lineups just sort of pan out. So I do expect him to be in the second unit. I think he could very well move into the starting lineup. But if he's in the second unit, I have big expectations. So I think he's a viable option for the Sixth Man of the Year award.
Absolutely. And full disclosure for my pick, this was probably the one award that I had the most trouble with. And we were even talking about it before we started recording. You never know with some of these guys. I mean, some of these guys might end up on the bench that we thought were going to be starters. Some of these guys on the bench, they eventually become starters and then, aren't qualified to win this award. So I went with a pretty safe pick. He's won it a couple of times, or at least been talked about in the past, and has won the award previously. And that's Jordan Clarkson. I found out doing this research that he's actually on the Knicks this year, believe it or not. They're going to need a guy off the bench. That's something that they were missing in the playoffs, I think, when they were battling out with Indiana in the Eastern Conference Finals. So a guy like Jordan Clarkson, who is a proven scorer. I mean, he doesn't really defend. I wouldn't really say he's a great passer, but he can score the ball, and I think that's what they need. When Jalen Brunson needs a minute, or when Karl Anthony Towns needs a minute, they can bring in a guy whose sole purpose is to have the offense run through him. So I'm going with Jordan Clarkson on that. I don't know how you feel. I feel like that is probably a really just boring, safe pick.
No, I think it's a good pick. I mean, and also, too, though, Mike Brown's going to be running things now there in New York. So I do think you can't go wrong with Clarkson. I mean, he's so good, and he's a very, very just safe option off the bench. He's going to bolster their bench scoring immediately. He might not give you much else, but he will give you a lot of scoring, and that's always sometimes conducive to being in the race for Sixth Man of the Year.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to Rookie of the Year now. I think this is another kind of layup as far as who we're actually thinking about winning the award, that being Cooper Flagg of the Dallas Mavericks. I think he is a favorite. I don't know if that's who you picked. That's who I picked, but there are a couple of other options out there that I wouldn't be surprised if they made a pretty big stamp in their rookie year. Maybe they don't win the award, but they're going to be guys to watch years to come.
Yeah, so I expect Flagg to win the award. However, if there was somebody else that I think can't be denied is Ace Bailey.
Yes.
I think he is going to have a pretty good year. He's so talented, and I feel like some of that got lost amidst all the losses at Rutgers last season, but he's a guy who's going to be able to come in, give you instant production. I think the Jazz are really high on him. My only hope is that they allow him to play through his mistakes, but if they do just that, I think he will get better as the year goes along, and I have really high expectations for him. I think he could average 17, 18 points a game.
Oh, and you got to think with the supporting cast around him in Utah, I mean, they are going to be relying quite a bit on Ace Bailey there. Yes. So, again, not a bad pick. And, yeah, he was probably the next guy up that I would say has a pretty good shot. I mean, just the noise around him, and obviously after the draft, there was all that talk about how he doesn't really want to be in Utah. I think if I think that kind of got blown out of proportion a bit. I think he's going to be ready to play. I mean, even in summer league, you saw those flashes. So again, I think him and Cooper Flagg, it really is kind of just between them and maybe a handful of other guys for that award. But Cooper Flagg definitely the favorite there. Most improved. Now this was the one award that I've got a lot of names for. I'm going to try and narrow it down, but I don't know who you had, AJ. Who do you think is bound for maybe not a bounce back year necessarily, but a big year, a much bigger year than they had last year?
I have Shaedon Sharpe of the Portland Trail Blazers award. Yeah, he averaged 18.5 points a game last year, started 52 out of 72 games. But here's the thing. Scoot Henderson is going to be out for at least the first 1 to 2 months of the year. Anthony Simons now is playing in Boston. He was traded. So I think the opportunity is there for him to really take a jump this season. I think he averaged, like I said, 18.5 points a game. I expect that to go up somewhere in the mid-20s. But just on top of that, I think he's ready. It seems like Portland was kind of trying to decide who they wanted to sort of proceed with in terms of that lead guard position. You had Scoot, you had Simons, and you had Sharpe. Well, right now it's Sharpe's job to lose with obviously Henderson being out. So I have really high expectations for him. I think he could start off the year really well and not look back.
Yeah, definitely. I want to get your opinion before I give my official prediction. Andrew Nembhard of the Indiana Pacers. I really like that pick, but I was thinking, I'm double backtracking a little bit because he had such a breakout in the playoffs, and I'm worried that voters are just going to say, well, we're taking it from the playoffs last year. He may have improved his regular season numbers and maybe picked off where he was in the postseason, but at the same time, are they going to count that as improvement from last year? I mean, I just don't know when their timeline is. So Andrew Nembhard, do you think even if he has, just repeats what he's doing with a bigger role now that Tyrese Halliburton is out, I mean, do you think that he is getting some attention for that award? Do you think he may be up for it?
I definitely do. I think if he carries on like his production that he had towards the end of the year, I think he has to be in consideration for that role. I mean, when you look at the fact that Indiana's not going to have its engine pretty much, its star guard, if he steps in and is able to help keep the Pacers afloat in the Eastern Conference, you have to look at him. But he's one of those guys where you're really intrigued because he's always made the most of his opportunities.
Absolutely.
And now he's got a really big opportunity. And so to me, it makes me wonder, like, what can he do in a seismic role where he's expected to lead every single night? I'm excited. That's a really good pick. But yeah, no, if there is any carryover, I still think you have to consider it. That was last season. This is this season.
Yeah, whole new different ball game to be sure. So I'll probably pick Andrew Nembhard as my official pick, but some other guys I would really like to highlight, and I was going to make this my safe pick, was just a Thompson twin, whichever one, Amen or Sarr, whichever one would win, because again, they had great seasons, but again, those were those rookie years. They were dealing with getting used to the offense, getting used to the NBA game, and now that they're a little bit more established, and you look at the two teams, again, the Pistons and the Rockets, bound to have playoff years, bound to make some noise. I think those would be two safe options as well. And again, you kind of, picking a Thompson twin, you kind of get 2 for 1 on that deal there.
Oh, yeah. And both of those guys are a jump shot away from stardom.
Exactly.
If they can figure out their jumpers, the rest of the league better look out.
Even if just shooting like 30% from 3, I mean, that would be huge for them for sure.
If they could become very catch and shoot guys, very good at that, it's over.
Exactly. All right, moving on now to Defensive Player of the Year. Again, this is an award that really has been kind of dominated by just a handful of guys. And again, I feel like this year, kind of the same thing. The best defensive players are already kind of hearing their name thrown across for this award. I've got a tie again. I'm going to make my official choice now. I'm going to go with Dyson Daniels of the Atlanta Hawks. I had a tie between him and Victor Wembanyama because he just tallies up every single block, and he gets so many steals, and he's a great defender. And I don't even think it really gets touched on because he is not only, even if he doesn't have the crazy block numbers that we've seen so far, he's changing the way offenses run. I think there's probably a 10-minute compilation out there right now of people with wide open layups, they could contest for a layup and they just don't because Wemby's there in the paint. So again, I don't think that would be a bad pick, but I'm going to rock with Dyson Daniels. I think he's got a little bit of momentum just from a great season last year, and the fact that we hear all the time that voters really just discount guards and smaller players. He's a guard. He is a guy that racks up crazy amounts of steals. I think maybe kind of what we saw with Marcus Smart, just the agenda of, the smaller guys deserve some love for the Defensive Player of the Year too.
Yeah, they really do. They don't get enough credit, and I don't know what it is. I'm a big fan of the analytics, and I'm a big fan of the stats, but at the end of the day, you have to watch how good guys are on a nightly basis to really get an understanding of how much value they bring to a team defensively. But that leads me into the guy I'm choosing. I'm going with Bam Adebayo.
Okay.
I think Bam has been due to win this award for quite some time. His switchability, his versatility on the perimeter, inside and out, I just think he's going to bring it, and like I said, I think he's very deserving of this award. The way he defends pick and rolls, the way he defends guards, he's athletic enough to handle his own against bigs, so he's got it all to me. But I do worry, similar to what you said, Phil, I worry that his numbers just won't pop enough for voters to feel inclined to give him that nod. But another guy that I do have in mind also too is Chet Holmgren.
Yeah,
I don't think he can be denied. I think the more he's learning about his body and positioning on a night-to-night basis, I think he's just going to thrive. And I think that's somebody who will have the numbers. I think Chet may average 3 blocks a game at some point in his career. I don't know if that'll happen this year, but I think he could very well average 2 with the way that he moves and with how fluid he is.
Absolutely. I do like that Bam pick, but again, kind of what we've been alluding to, that you need to watch the games. I don't know how good the Heat are going to be this year, and I feel like he might kind of fall into that mix of, nobody's really paying attention to what Bam's doing out in Miami. But hopefully I'm wrong. I think the Heat name does carry a little bit. They've got crazy fans down there too, so maybe they'll be able to push that agenda a little bit further.
Yeah, and they're always well coached too.
Yes, exactly. All right, well, let's wrap things up, AJ, with our MVP picks. Again, I have kind of another boring one. I don't know who you're kind of thinking about, but there are a couple of other names that I would like to see. I don't know about if they'll win, but definitely would like to see them win.
For sure, yeah. So the guy that I have in mind is Anthony Edwards.
Oh my gosh, we had the same pick.
I don't think that's boring.
Yeah, okay, all right, I'll let you go. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's Anthony Edwards. I think it's his time. I really do. The Timberwolves have made the Western Conference Finals now 2 years in a row. I think they're right on the cusp of breaking over, and I just think he's ready. On a night-to-night basis, he's just been absolutely phenomenal. He does it on both ends of the floor. I mean, you could argue he might be the closest thing we've seen to a young Michael Jordan. Absolutely. Maybe not a prime Michael Jordan, but a young one. He's learning how to use his athleticism better. He's learning to play with pace. His ball handling has improved. Last year, he made over 300 three-pointers. I'm so optimistic. I think the sky's the limit. He's a guy that I think he will win it at some point. I don't know if it'll happen this season, but I am optimistic it'll happen this year just because I think this team really has it figured out. Last year, it seemed like they were kind of struggling, especially in the regular season with the Randall trade, but I think all of these guys now just are completely bought in, and I think they're understanding and aware of how good they can be. And I think Anthony Edwards is going to spearhead that.
Every time I think of Anthony Edwards, I always get thrown back to the 2022 playoffs when the Minnesota Timberwolves took on the Memphis Grizzlies, and it just felt like every shot that Anthony Edwards took, it went in. And I've been mesmerized by this. Since then, I've been mesmerized. Every Timberwolves game, I try to tune in just to see what he's going to do. He's got the highlight plays. He's got the total game. He's, like you said, he does it on both sides of the ball, and he genuinely loves the game of basketball. You can tell how much he does like it. It helps when you're really good like that, but you can tell that he is passionate about it. Right. I think he is just totally ready to take that final step. I think he's already in MVP conversations, or at least should be. Yes. But this year, especially if Minnesota does a really good job kind of picking off where they were last year and maybe even being that 2 or 3 seed in the West, I think this is the time to really grant it to him. And again, there's always going to be talks about, Jokic is the guy. Right. He's going to be putting up insane numbers. He's probably going to have a better year again this year. But it's just a matter of, are the voters tired of seeing Jokic win year after year? Do they want to give it to somebody else and reward, again, another great season? It's not like it's going to be a bad season. They're just giving it to anybody. I think Anthony Edwards is going to be, I could see him averaging close to 30. I really do. Yeah, I think the way that he plays the game and the way that Minnesota's offense and whole team is really centered around him, I think he's due for just an even bigger year than what we've seen so far.
Yeah, and when you look at just the breakneck pace that all these teams are playing with, I think they'll have more than enough possessions for him to do so. But also, too, another thing that I want to bring to your attention, I want to get your thoughts on this is, it seems like when a guy wins for the first time, I almost get the feeling voters feel inclined to vote for him again because they want to see if he can expand on his MVP year, the first year he wins. And then after that, it seems like they get a little sick of the guy.
Right.
So I think SGA will have a pretty good chance as well, just because of the fact that he won it last year and he was so efficient. I see him being just as good this year, barring injury or something, knock on wood. But yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on that because I feel like that's becoming more and more commonplace.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think Shea is in that top 5 right now.
Yeah.
My only worry about that is that are we tired of him winning so much? I mean, you look at Jokic in particular. The first couple of times he won MVP, Nuggets really didn't do a whole lot in the playoffs. I was thinking back to when Giannis was winning, and we kind of felt that same thing. Is he going to win year after year because he just does so much? But they weren't really winning anything, and you saw when they were kind of making those jumps into the finals and into the Eastern Conference Finals, voting kind of went down a little bit because he was winning all the awards. So I wonder if Shea, having one of the craziest years accolades-wise last year, MVP, Finals MVP, NBA championship. Are the voters going to be kind of tired of that? Are they going to get a little shade out a little bit? I definitely still think he should be up there. I almost picked him again, but again, I'm feeling really confident about the Anthony Edwards and the fact that you picked him too. That makes me feel a little bit more confident in that pick.
Likewise, man. Likewise. I feel just as good about it.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to keep this right now in all of our lists and see, at the end of the season, who got it right, maybe who kind of surprised us and everything, and definitely be back revisiting that at a later date. But AJ, again, this is the start of NB8. We are so excited to be bringing it to everybody right here on the Daily 8 on Wood TV Plus. It's going to be an awesome, awesome season. We're so excited for it. AJ, thank you so much for stopping by today.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And awesome stuff from AJ. Again, we're so excited about NB8. Again, this is going to be airing every single Tuesday throughout the NBA season. AJ and I will be, of course, focusing a lot on the Detroit Pistons, but again, focusing on the state of the NBA as well and all the major storylines going on associated with that. But again, we won't be seeing that again until next weekend, until next Tuesday, I should say. So just be on the lookout for that. You can always catch the full episode over on our website, woodtv.com as well.